right, sweet. And we're recording. Um, so yeah, we're just kind of talking about your exploration of this new role right now, and like, I, great time for the new role. Also, like in terms of like where we are as like a country, social justice, looking at people holistically. Also, a new role in. I mean, actually, yeah. Do you think this is a new, like, is this new within professional sports? Like,
I mean, I, obviously, I had no, nothing to kind of gauge off of when I got into the role as far as things that had been done. I think this is fairly new. I know I would say at the NFL level, as far as club teams, I know that other organizations have addressed um, you know current players more. I would say with our skill sets as far as social workers, clinicians, and those aspects of it. I know that's kind of been geared towards more of the active players.
Mhm.
I think this one is more unique because it is working with the alumni.
Yeah.
So there are, since I've been here, I've been privileged to meet other social workers who work in the capacity through the NFL, through some of the partnering organizations.
Okay.
And so, being able to meet them, hear a little bit about their role that they serve. More of the players, obviously, I'm here with the specific team with the Raiders,
Yeah.
but they serve more on the level of the entire alumni portion of the league. So, cool to have met them and kind of hear a little bit more about their role, and they're excited to hear of another social work, obviously,
Sure.
being within the league, right? And being with a specific team, I think is exciting as well for them, because they've seen how it's kind of evolved and transcended a little bit more.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, when I reached out to you initially, that was the first time that I'd been exposed to social work within professional sports, and that was gratifying in a few different ways, right?
Yeah.
One, to see the scope of social work practice expanding is really important. As someone who wants to work in post-secondary education and specifically within sport, it's really important to me that there's representation, right?
Right.
When we're talking about the holistic development, right? It's not just performance. It's not
Right.
not just in the collegiate sense. It's not just academic. There's a social aspect to it, right?
Right.
And we forget about that. And so when I saw, I'm looking at this face, I'm like, well, okay, something's happening, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I'm like, all right, cool, all right, yeah. This is exactly what I needed uh, to like keep me going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is as you know, the process, the journey of social work education, and I can only speak on behalf of at the graduate level because I didn't.
Yeah.
Um, it's a it's chaotic in a sense. You know
Mm.
what I mean? You're just exposed,
Yeah.
challenged constantly, and it's hard to talk about it with people who haven't done it, right? And
Absolutely.
I would say the same thing for right, like you've got a really unique story, and maybe that's where we'll get back to. And I was fascinated when you told me the story about like how you found out about this job and the beginning of it.
Yeah.
But you were so representative of the what is it? Yeah, you're representative of knowing what it's like to like have a dream, give your all into it, and
Yeah.
recognize that that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Sport,
Yeah. That's
sport is unique in that sense, right?
right.
And and yeah, that's why I'm like, sport and social work go hand in hand, like
Right.
hand in hand. So yeah, let's go back because I love this story. I really I love the story of finding out about this role. So let's backtrack into maybe where were you in your, I'm trying to think. Okay, so I just finished my second to last semester. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm in my last semester of grad school.
Oof.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go back to your last semester of grad school, if you can go back and think about where you are and then walk me kind of through the, what was it? The summit, where
Yes.
did it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, just so it was this time last year. Man, I had been off of social media for the last couple of weeks. Kind of just taking a sabbatical a little bit to take a step back and really, just get more in tune with what I am doing, how I got here, and just to reflect a little bit, man. It's been a hell of a year in itself, but just to think about what the difference 365 days can make, on your life. And, this time last year, I was getting prepared to graduate, was at Barry University doing my MSW. And, while I was there for those 2 years, I wasn't an undergrad, I wasn't a BSW student, so I had to do the long route, right?
Yeah.
And as a part-time student and for myself at the time, I was a entrepreneur in the field.
Mm.
And so I had taken the steps to start an organization in 2017 when I started my matriculation through the program. And for me, it was like business school. I read an article on LinkedIn that talked about the MSW being the new MBA. And so for me, that was something that really, just connected with me because I had heard my mom was a social worker. My mom, she did her MSW at Barry University. So I was well aware of what the degree was. I just didn't know how I would be able to utilize it. And I think that's a lot of times where I speak to a lot of men in particular who go into the field, and that's kind of their experience.
Yeah.
There a lot of times isn't this path that's marked out, especially for men of color, and what you're traditionally supposed to do with the MSW degree. So, getting ready to graduate, had all these, ideas in my mind about what it would be like after graduation, just not having to do the internship, not having to turn in those papers. So like that in itself was that, that relief. But also a part of me was wanting to get back into sports. Just my story and just my collegiate career ending on a injury that happened, 10 minutes before my final game, which was a championship game. And so, having that experience as an athlete, having a tryout at the professional level with the Raiders in 2012 and getting cut from that, those experiences were my final experiences with sports. And so, as you can imagine, when those are your last experiences that you have, it's the relationship between you and sport can sometimes be, skewed or it could take an effect on how you view the sport or how you even interact with the sport. And so, my experiences over those last couple of years were I had really no involvement in sport. Wasn't coaching, had done maybe trained some kids here or there, but really had no involvement in sports. And I wanted to get back into it. And so I knew that, with obviously finishing school, having a new skill set that I can offer to athletes when it came to mental health, education, and awareness, I just felt like this, having the degree and having gone through the coursework and done my own work, on myself and really, allowing the coursework to impact me and to bring up things about myself that I wasn't even aware of until until some of that coursework really starts to intersect between the work that you're doing and the life that you live, and so that was revealing. And I think when you have those experiences through that program, depending on what program you are, but I think the MSW program, it definitely gets into a lot of the nitty gritty of our personal. And it's, and it makes you start become more unaware, and hopefully it starts to reveal things to you that you may not have been aware of before. But it helps you ultimately because, it's very important for you to have those experiences so that you can share those experiences with your clients.
Sure.
And, so when I decided that I wanted to get back into sports, it was someone told me about this conference, and they put the bug in my ear about this conference. It was called the Black Student Athlete Summit. And it takes place at the University of Texas in Austin. And so I look at the I go to the website and I look at the proposal times, and around the proposal, I think I submitted, it was probably October, November around then. And so submitted a proposal, and I wanted to talk about, not only my experience, but I wanted to highlight the experience of athletes after their transition out of sports. And so came up with pretty much just like a I wanted to present at so there was presentations that can be done, and then there was poster presentations. So I wanted to originally present this information or the findings that I got, and it was on post-transition sports depression, so PTSD.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, utilize obviously the PTSD acronym because I know it resonates in our community, but also for others who have no idea about, anything, but PTSD is one of those acronyms that obviously resonates. But I wanted it to come from an athletic lens and talk about the transition and the experience with depression that many athletes experience and that they're a lot of times aren't aware of. And so I submitted that proposal, and I received feedback back as they wanted me to present a poster presentation. And I had never done a poster presentation before, but for me, I took it as a challenge to do something that I hadn't done before. I was more comfortable speaking in front of an audience and doing presentations with PowerPoints and stuff like that. But this was an opportunity for me to do something outside of my comfort, but also to do something that I felt would I could expand upon as far as being able to do something geared around research. And so I was accepted to the presentation, and then earlier this year, January of 2020, was the conference. And so I traveled to the University of Texas. I get there, and I see all of these student athletes from all these universities across the country. They're there with academic advisors, people who are a part of the academic department who work and serve these student athletes. And so just being there, as a former student athlete, it was just encouraging to see that there was a place for, as student athletes of color to be able to come and get information. And it was very, it's a very powerful conference in the sense of academia. I think that was one of the things that I stood out with so many, Black and brown people of color, with PhDs, with doctors. And it was encouraging to see that, you know what I mean? For someone who had just got through their degree and thinking that, hey, I just got through mine, I'm done, I'm good. And then you see a room full of guys, men and women with PhDs in higher education. And so, it was inspiring in that sense of it. And so as I'm at the conference, wrapping up, I was able to present my poster and my findings, and, just wanted to share and highlight really the experience of athletes of color in their transition compared to another. There was other research that was done that really highlighted the experience, and I don't think it was intentionally, but it was majority focused on white student athletes, and the experiences were completely different. So I wanted to highlight those.
Yeah.
And while I was there, it was the last day of the conference. I was running late to the conference. I wasn't there with university. A lot of the other participants that were at the conference were there with their school, and so they stayed at the fancy hotel. I had to stay off campus, more of a secluded location that was a lot cheaper.
Yep.
So that's a part of. I look at that because there was so much resistance for myself just getting to the conference. Having to pay for my own flight, having to book your own hotel. So all those things played a role into my decision making. But I'm glad I followed through and decided that I was gonna take this opportunity and run with it. And the final day of the conference, I wound up running into, her name is Kiera McClendon, and she works at Ohio State University. And, she's also a financial literacy entrepreneur and has a business where she teaches financial literacy to children. And, we just started talking. We were just the only two people out of 500 people at this conference that were at the wrong place at the right time, I guess.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation, maybe 10, 15 minutes, walking across the campus to get to where we needed to be. And, she just started to, share some of her experiences working with student athletes. I shared a lot of my experiences and my story. And, we just connected. We shared our information with each other. And ultimately, I thought that was it. Maybe at the most, I'll probably, hear from her and get an opportunity to, bring my business to Ohio State. And so on January 1st of 2020, I had officially registered the business as Inspire You LLC.
Yep.
And it's a consulting business where, I definitely created it for to be able to be an asset to not only student athletes, but to athletic departments, high school athletic departments, but to be able to bring mental health in a capacity where student athletes will be able to receive it.
Sure.
And, the basis of it is just to tackle stigma.
Yeah.
So being able to bring that to that conference, and then to be able to share a lot of the vision that I had from that with someone, and they received it and said, wow, this is something that I would, definitely want to just stay in touch with you about.
Yeah.
And so I leave the conference, and about 3 days later was my birthday. Turning 30, I decided to go skydiving. And I'm like, all right. Just, and for me, I'm a very I like symbolic things. So I'm like, all right, we got to take on new heights. Like you're soaring to new heights. And so the idea in my mind was that if I go skydiving and I jump out this plane, it just takes fear out of the equation. Like, the next step that you're going to have to take, you're going to have to take fear out of it. And so, I go out, jump out this plane. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I never felt more alive in my life than jumping out of a plane. It was a crazy feeling. But the moment that I landed, I go to my car to go get my phone, and I open my phone and I see a message from Kiera, and it was the job.
Oh,
for
yeah.
the Raiders. And she sent it to me via Instagram and was like, hey, I remember our conversation. I know you talked about, your time with the Raiders, and I know you talked about being a social worker, but the Raiders are looking for a social worker. And so I thought this would be something, you would have interest in. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I'm thinking, it couldn't have been, it was just surreal. So I go home that night. I had plans of going out, and just celebrating my birthday. But, something just told me, take the time to fill out this application and submit your resume and your cover letter. And so I just put off everything that night and did it. And, it wind up being the opportunity that landed me here. So it was, surreal in that sense of it, to where, just like I said, being at the wrong place at the right time, and that opportunity to be created out of that.
How did you find out about the conference?
Oh man. So her name is the sports counselor on Instagram. Her name is Leah Howard.
Okay.
And, Leah told me she had presented at the conference the year before. Okay. And just in a conversation of us both having backgrounds as former collegiate athletes.
Okay.
And she had, made the transition into going into counseling. Okay. And, working in that capacity. And so, we wound up getting connected, and she shared that information with me. And I was doing a lot of conferences in the speaking circuit a little bit through my nonprofit. And so, I had a little bit experience of submitting proposals for conferences and being able to go there and speak. Yep. And so, I just figured I had never done it in that capacity as far as when it comes to, athletics. And that year, last year, this year, I would say, the beginning of this year, the conference was geared towards mental health. Mm. And so I just felt like it was just, perfect for what I was bringing in there and what I was doing and what I wanted to do. And I just felt like it was just one of those, moments in time where it just all just connected.
Yeah, I'm having one of those moments now with the Black Student Athlete Program, something that you told me about. And I've actually connected with two people who presented that last year. And so, it's just, so one, thank you for being the connect, right? Yeah. And, one of the another kind of Kickstarter for me when, I developed this collegiate student athlete development program was going to the NCAA's website and seeing that in 2020, the focal point was mental health. Right. Thinking to myself, like, okay, all right. So the conversation is being had. It's a serious thing. If it was the focal point of the national conference, right, then this is the perfect time, right? Yeah, yeah. This is the time. So I'm always fascinated with kind of adversity, right? And I think you went through a process where you could have easily, this could have been completely different, right?
Right.
You could have gotten into a depression, right? That's, I don't know what that's like, and I don't think there's many people who understand
Right.
the story in the sense of, I I tried out for, not like the second tier, the pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
The highest level that you can play this game.
Right.
And I'm putting my cards on the table, and then that doesn't work out, right? And not only did you, you know, bounce back, but you, in a sense, I would say you channeled that drive that you applied to sports,
Yeah.
and you were able to transfer it into your education and then in your professional development. Uh,
Right.
and so, yeah, what were those? Yeah, what were the things? Was it, you know, obviously mom being a social worker,
Right.
exposure has got to be one of the things. You know, was there anyone else who, or were there people, were there experiences that kind of led you, that supported you?
Yeah, man. That's uh it's a longer story that I'll try to shrink into. Man, it was a lot of different experiences, and then, you know, just looking back on last year was like, you know, the end of a decade, and I look at just in that 2010s, right? For me in 2010, I was playing college football, and then by the end of, you know, that decade, I was, you know, finishing up my master's degree in social work, which I could not have told you 10 years ago or 5 years ago that I would even be deciding to go back to school to study anything, let alone to do social work. And, you know, I think for me, it was having those experiences earlier on. And so when I was done playing in 2012, you know, I had those experiences as a former athlete in transition. And, you know, for me, it was tough. It was real tough. I had a son who was born right after I was done playing. You know, he wound up later being diagnosed with autism, and so it was these moments that were happening in my life, and then I you know, just as a person, just trying to, you know, for me personally, having to look from the outside looking in and just being like, well, what is really going on,
Yeah,
right? You know, all these things just look promising. You know, so short, like for a short time ago, and now everything is moving in this opposite direction.
yeah,
And so I remember it was one moment. I remember this moment so vividly, but it was one moment that really just set me in a different path where I felt like, you know, it's just something I had to do. Where it literally was a moment where I felt like it was life or death, and it
yeah,
wasn't in the physical sense, but I just felt like it was life or death in the sense that if I didn't move on what I was feeling,
yeah.
that I would lose the energy to ever be able to do this again.
Mm,
And so that's how serious that moment was for me. But it was 2016, 4 years ago. I was at that point I was in the field of social services. So I was working with case management and stuff like that for Department of Children and Families in Florida. And you know, I got burnt out after a while. I just was like, yo, I don't know if I could do this anymore. Like it wasn't so much the work that I was doing, but it was the capacity of which I was able to do it. And
talk, if you don't mind talking a little bit more about that.
yeah,
I don't think that
yeah,
a lot of, I don't think folks who work outside of social services understand what that burnout looks like, or maybe for anyone
right.
who's, you know, thinking about becoming a case manager or someone who's in
Right.
a BSW or BSW program right now. Talk a little bit more about what that the bandwidth and the
Yeah.
bandwidth issues and what that burnout looked like for you.
You know, for me, not having the social work background in my undergrad and to go into, you know, social services, I felt like the one thing that I didn't understand in this capacity was boundaries.
Mm,
I didn't have any boundaries between my personal life and my work because a lot of the clients that I was serving, a lot of the families that I was working with, I shared experiences with them. You
yeah,
know what I mean? It was I was doing work in, you know, for communities and for people who had some of my same, you know, experiences that I had growing up. And so I felt like for me it was like this personal aspect of the work that I was doing because, you know, I was working in a community that reflected, you know, my experiences.
yeah,
But a part of it as well was just not knowing the boundaries between my personal life and work, not really understanding that, I could set boundaries,
Sure.
as a man, because I think that was just a part of, just being dependable all the time. And that's what I thought that was what manhood was. It was like, I have to be dependable, whether it's my job, whether it's my spouse, whether it's my family, my son, like everything depends on my dependability. And so I used to, just hone in on that aspect of like, I always have to show up. I always have to be dependable, rather than taking time to say, hey, in this moment, I can't always be the person that's, pouring out of this empty cup in a sense. So,
Mhm.
when it got to a point where, I was at this point after a year. I had worked with, I was working as a case manager, so I was helping families get reunified, and I love the work. I love the clients that I was serving. I think in that 1 year, I had 7 families that got reunited, and
Mm.
to me, it was just like, for someone who really wasn't passionate about social work or social services, I found passion in the work, and I was passionate about serving, and I was passionate about the outcomes that our families were having. And so, you know, after a while, it just became to where it was like, you get more cases and more cases and more cases. And, eventually you're at this caseload and you're just like, I don't have it.
Yep.
I don't have the capacity to really, be all in, and for me, I felt like it's a disservice. And I always check with myself. If I'm doing something and I'm giving it half, or not even, I can't give it 100%, then for me, it's just, I know I shouldn't be doing it, especially something as important as working with children and families, So that was kind of that decision that I made when I was like, yo, I don't have the capacity to do this day in and day out. And then also the experiences I saw that my other colleagues were having. So people who have been in the field for years, a lot of them, they just become numb, shut down a little bit to, the work that we do. And it just becomes work. And, I never wanted to get to that place, to where I just started seeing these as just cases and, just do my notes and go home. I didn't want to get to that place. So a part of me was just taking a step back to say, maybe I'm in the wrong field. And so I thought, by going into teaching or doing, at one point I wanted to be a PE coach. I said, hey, if I can go and just wear shorts every day and play basketball or play football with these kids, then I'll do that, So a part of it was just searching for a better fit, but also was just trying to explore. All I had been doing up until that time was working in the foster care system, so child welfare. So I really hadn't had any other work experience, and so I said, let me try to get into something that wasn't as crisis filled and chaotic sometimes. So tried to go into teaching, and I was subbing for a little bit, and so in 2016 I was subbing, and at one point I was just working as like a guy who sits on the front cart that lets people into the high school or whatever. And that was pretty much my role, and this was 4 years ago. And so I remember sitting one day and this car drives up as I'm like just checking people in, just letting them know where the front office is.
Yeah.
And the window drops and I look at it and I see it was a guy that I had tried out with the Raiders with.
Yeah.
Right. And so I look at him, we look at each other. He's like, yo, man, what you doing? What you doing? He was coaching. He was coaching at NC State at the time. He was like a defensive back coach. We're
Okay.
the same age, but, he's coaching, he's traveling, he's recruiting. So, we bumped into each other while he was recruiting. And, we see each other, we're just trying to catch up. And he's like, man, what are you doing now? And I think in that moment, it just hit me like what am I doing?
Am I doing that?
And I'm like, in my mind, I'm in between just trying to figure it out. I'm working here. I'm working at the Boys and Girls Club. I'm working 3 jobs at the time. And I'm just like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
And it just hit me. He drove away from that conversation just like, hey, man, glad to catch up with you. But, I left that conversation just feeling, as low as I could have possibly felt, just because I just felt like, in those years that had passed, people were taking advantage of it, not feeling sorry for themselves, going into things that they were, obviously passionate about. And I was still trying to explore and find what I was actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so, those feelings of failing, those feelings of being a failure, all kind of was just, starting to creep in. And so, for me, it was just one of those times where I could either, stay in that moment or just kind of pivot and just figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And so that was definitely that defining moment that I had that it just really kind of just set my hair on fire a little bit to say, okay, you know what? You're obviously not where you want to be, but are you planning on staying here?
Yeah.
You know, and so like that experience definitely was one that I highlight.
Yeah. I'm happy that you talk so transparently about being burnt out and
Yeah.
overworked and really not caring about the work, and it just turns into kind of like a process, right? And
Yeah.
it's maybe not mindless, maybe not be the word, but yeah, you lose your passion. And I think that anyone who is competitive, right?
Right.
Specifically in sport, right? Like I was talking to you about, my open water swimming, right? I love open water.
Yeah.
It's one of the most similar to skydiving. I can't, there's no other feeling that I have ever had
Yeah.
where I'm out and it is life or death. That I'm totally out of, I admit that I have no control. I think I
Mhm.
have some sort of control,
Right.
but I don't. I mean, and I would say that's probably more often in life, right? You
Man.
control.
Right.
There's so many outside factors. Who knows? Like I've said this before. I was like, we live on a sphere in a universe that's like that's
That yeah. Revolve. Yeah. All that stuff. Right.
right. Like, there's so much going on, but it's important. Sometimes I look for motivation. Like there's people who I follow on Instagram, and there's folks who I look to who are doing some type of sport, or maybe they're um, workout junkies or whatever, health fanatics, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I sit there and I do get inspiration from them, and then I have to sit back at times and think like, yeah, this is a different type of workout. This is a different type of competition. And sometimes I tell myself, and maybe I say it kind of loud. I'm like, you couldn't do this in social work. Like, so I say that because
Man, that's a. I'm glad you brought that up because I was just talking about this the other day, but I'm gonna let you continue. Go
no,
ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Man, so I would say the one of the biggest parts about transition for athletes in general, I'll say athletes specifically, is that where do I get that competitive itch from?
Mm.
Right? Where is that gonna come from again? And for me, that's why I played the game. For me, that was what I prided myself on was the competition. It wasn't. It's like, and to me, I explain competition or being competitive as I hate to lose more than I love to win. Right. So it's like that is what fuels me is this possibility of this notion that I can lose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know what I mean. Rather than I go into it just wanting to win, I want the outcome. It was just that was the aspect of what I focused on a lot when it came to my competitive spirit. And so when I transitioned, it was like, and I walked into a world that was all about empathy and compassion and being selfless and all those things that I feel like were a part of you know the essence of me, but because my identity, I didn't have a secure identity in myself
Yeah.
because my identity was rooted in sport. And
Mm-hmm.
so in sport, my identity was around competition. It was around being passionate. It was about beating the person in front of them and then letting them know that I beat them. And that was the part that I grew up around. And I'll just say, as a kid growing up in South Florida, watching these University of Miami Hurricane teams play, that was the way that I saw the game. And so, to have a platform to express that part of myself, that's what football gave me. And so when it was gone, it was just like, you know, where do I have an outlet to, express these things, or where do I have an outlet? And it was, for me, that was where a lot of the conflict was coming, was that I just didn't have a space to be competitive.
Yeah.
And when I feel like when athletes lose that sense of themselves, it's like, well, where do I, obviously I have transferable skills, but how do I utilize them? Where are they accepted? Because just being, and I look at, a lot of times when you watch the NFL draft and you talk about, how the commentators utilize certain key words to describe a player, right? And it's like, especially for these, young Black athletic guys, they're freak of nature, they're this, they're that. It's just certain connotations that we use. And it's like, I can't put that on the resume.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's great for the draft. You know
No,
what I mean?
nobody's looking
Right?
at me if I put a freak of nature on.
Freak of nature. Like I can't put that on the resume sheet. So, just not knowing how to utilize my, draft resume versus, an actual resume to actually put something down that I feel like it will be marketable, and obviously in a different industry. I felt like that was sometimes the conflict that I was having was that, obviously I know I'm a leader, I'm all this stuff because I've been this in another space, but it's like, what is it going to take for, others to see those skill sets that I possess in this industry, and how does it, transition, or how is it transferable, and how do I utilize it? And so that was, I think, in the early phases, that was where a lot of my conflict was coming from, was just like this identity that I once possessed that I could utilize, and I could tap into it every day when I stepped out on the practice field or on a game day. But then when that was gone, when that platform was gone, it was like I have all of this and nowhere to utilize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're in school and you're developing, right? Because it's such a lot of this development has happened while you're in an academic institution, right?
Right.
Uh, who were your support systems there? I mean, uh, again, I've never met your mother, but I've got to assume
Yeah.
I've got to assume that your mom was a support system, a major support system for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think just from my time at Barry, man, I had so many different people who just played a role in any ideas that I felt like I had, or anything that I wanted to do. That I would say that, from my background, from my experience there, I'd never really had a student like myself.
Yep.
And I don't say that in this way of highlighting myself, but I say that in a sense of, I came into the program already locked in on what exactly I wanted to do. And I had already started what I was going to do.
Mm.
And so for me, at the time that I applied to even get into Barry, um, I had applied for another school and didn't get in because of my grades. Like coming out of undergraduate, I had a 2.3 GPA, just wasn't an academically solid student throughout my entire academic life, probably since fourth grade, but at the time when I was applying, Barry, they sat me down and I had an interview to get in. And, I had to win them over based on the things that I had done in these last couple of years, but also what I was planning on proposing to do. And so I brought in my proposal, which was my organization, and I showed them, like, this is what I want to do. This is my experiences that I've accumulated through the work that I've done, but this is what I see myself doing going forward. And that was to be, a successful social entrepreneur in the field of social work. And so I think for them, it was refreshing to hear someone to come in that isn't just looking for a traditional, role in social work or in the field.
Absolutely.
And so I think a lot of the administration, a lot of the faculty, I think that it gave them a sense of like, okay, well, I'm so used to teaching students like this, but it would be exciting in class when one of my professors would be like, hey, you might want to write this down. And she'll be speaking about organizational or leadership or certain aspects that she felt as though like, hey, this is good for your self-development and your personal development. And so you need to know this if you plan on being, a CEO or executive director of an organization. And so, I think a lot of the faculty gravitated towards that aspect of how I was utilizing the coursework and the curriculum for my own personal growth and how I wanted to utilize it. And, a lot of opportunities came from that. So being a graduate research assistant was one of the things that I was when I was at the school. Just involved in so many different, mock trials and different things that I just wanted to be a part of everything that I could at the campus. And so, my faculty at the time, and they just were supportive. Anytime that something came up, they would recommend my name. They would put me in those positions to succeed. And so, definitely shout out to Barry, Dr. Tehan, Dr. Ingram Herring, and then also Dr. Scott, our dean, just for, a lot of what they have just instilled in us as students, but, making sure that those students that came in, that had maybe just a little bit a different approach to social work, that they were encouraged,
Yeah.
encouraged to think outside the box, and encouraged to be non-traditional.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so happy that you mentioned the individual faculty who
Yeah,
supported you, right? Because you absolutely need that, and I've been supported with, you know, uh, a few faculty members, the director of the program, and then
yeah,
I've had the really unique opportunity. I praise her. I'm fascinated by Erica Bosky, who I had the unique pleasure of facilitating groups with.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't get that support. You know what I mean?
Right,
I'm not sure, who else is encouraging that entrepreneurial social worker, right? And that's one of
right.
the struggles that I had. I wasn't that first. I didn't know how to create my lane in that first year.
Yeah,
Um, I think majority of the curriculum was kind of focused on the traditional social work, right? It wasn't about
right,
strategizing or creation and innovation. It was
right,
more about, yeah, we'll leave it at traditional. I have plenty of questions, but we'll leave it at traditional for now.
right. And
Um,
I think one of the things that I noticed was that because I we had two campuses, and so the main campus had most of the associate professors, right? So these were more of the professors who were research based,
yep.
right? Academia, right? So I felt like our experiences when we were at one of the sister sites was that we had a lot of adjunct professors. So
Hmm.
these were professors that were in the field,
Yeah.
still working,
Oh,
that
no.
were doing the work hands on. And I felt like their experience and their knowledge that they passed on to us was the knowledge that allowed us to, see outside of just the roles that we came in. Because, usually when somebody decides to go back to get their MSW, it's usually like three tracks, right?
Yeah,
You're enter you're doing the BSW straight through the MSW, you know what I mean? Graduate 22, 23 years old, you're good, whatever. Then they have the professional students who come back, who are in the field either working in some capacity, but they're deciding to come back to elevate, whether it's supervisor, whether some of those traditional roles. And then you have some that obviously are looking to go further and to get their PhD or whatever.
yeah.
And so when I looked at, just our professors and how they were able to speak to those experiences, because many of them were, professional students when they went and did their MSW, they were in the field, went back and then they decided how they were going to navigate the field. And so just hearing their perspective on, some of the things that they allowed, we had professors that were just strictly macro, social workers.
Yeah, totally.
And right. And so when I met those professors, I'm like, oh, I don't have to do this or direct service or you know what I mean? Like to
Absolutely.
me, that always encouraged me. It always encouraged me because I think it's like 95% of the field is going to be direct service. It's going to be micro social work. I think it was like a number in that realm. And just to see that and see that, the macro practitioners,
Yep.
are in the field and they're utilizing so many different aspects that we just don't always know.
Mhm.
And so to hear a lot of their feedback and for them to talk about, how you can be as non-traditional as long as you know that your skill set fits into that industry or into that world. And I just was one of those people who really took to what they were saying and made sure that when those opportunities presented themselves, that I was prepared, for whatever that opportunity may be.
Yeah. I've just signed on to do an independent study in the last semester to either create curriculum or revisit some curriculum that was in place like 5, 6 years ago. But
Yeah,
I think I just learned about this thinking process within graduate programs where there can be courses and then they put those courses aside and they implement new courses. Uh, but yeah, I really want to look. I really want to explore this entrepreneurial social worker, right?
yeah,
Innovative, and that's not new, right? I think if you go
no,
back and look at social work, it is completely innovative, right? We're talking about adapting to new systems and supporting clients through an ever-changing world. It social work is the epitome of entrepreneurism, right? Like,
Right. I
and
agree. I agree. I think it translates. I believe our skill sets and what the things that we learn, it translates a lot because what we're seeing now in our society is that the need for service is so important. And so whatever that service looks like, doesn't always have to be direct service, but whatever that service looks like. And I think, when we start to look at the things that we as social workers hold as valuable, especially in the context of environment and communities and those strengths uh, of our field, I think those are easily adaptable into many different, um, whether it be non-traditional or traditional settings. But I feel like a lot of times it just broadens, obviously, our range of where we can kind of fit. Um, and a lot of times it can be to create. And
yep,
so for me, my original thought was to create something because I felt as though my skill sets were being utilized. I would say that in the traditional field, but they were being also, let's say that they were being utilized, but I wasn't able to maximize from that utilization, right? And I think that's a lot of experiences of clinicians of color, especially when they're working with set populations that reflect them. That a lot of times your skill sets, sometimes we don't even know that they're our skill sets, right? We just look at it as like, hey, being from a urban community is a skill set. To be able to navigate that environment is a skill set,
yep,
right? Not everybody can just walk in and speak the language of the community. So I think, me being able to hone in on that skill set and to say, I want to make an organization that's geared towards, providing mental health education to minorities
yep.
and to underserved communities. For me, that was my way of saying that I've been doing this work, but now I'm just going to be able to do it in a capacity where I can kind of control the ins and outs of some aspects, but also I can control how much I maximize off of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one thing that I didn't realize how much support that you would get for starting your own, and the opportunities that and the access it would create for myself and being in certain rooms and being afforded certain opportunities to collaborate, to consult on certain projects. And I think that was when I started to realize that part. I was like, oh, yeah, this is way more valuable than people um, either don't know about the value in this aspect, or they just aren't aware. And so, for me, it was just always trying to shed light on that.
How did so you get to this creative place, right? You get to
Mhm.
this innovative place, and I would say that's when you are. uh, Creativity goes hand in hand with curiosity, right?
Right,
You get in that
right.
curious mindset, creativity is it's gonna happen.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
It's inevitable. What had changed about your surroundings, if you could kind of reflect on that? Like, what changed around you as you started to get into this curious mindset? Because I'm only asking this
Yeah,
for my own, um because my own, like, curiosity.
right,
I started to notice once this curiosity really started to, I don't even want to say peak because I don't know what that means, but once it was
right.
like flowing through my veins, it was hard to have conversations with a lot of
Yep,
people that I'd known for a really long time. And
yep.
not to say that there was anything wrong, it just, things shifted. Like, it wasn't like I couldn't talk. It was just, to a certain degree, I'm like, oh,
Conversation's different. Yeah, man. I noticed that, man. I remember it vividly, man. I remember kind of just removing myself,
hmm,
right? I removed myself only because I knew that inherently it's like the idea of like planting a seed, right? Like you can't plant a seed and then just watch it try to grow, right? It has to be kind of isolated. You'll never know what's really going in under the surface unless you put it in, obviously, like a little cup. It's invisible, right? But the process that it takes for that seed to be nourished, it has to be put sometimes in the filthiest conditions, which is dirt. You know what I mean? So for myself, I took it upon myself to just take a step back from everything that I had been doing.
okay,
And when I took that step back, I started to realize, like, people that I associated with, whether they were friends, whether they were just associates, whether people I just was around were they really nourishing my growth,
Mm,
right? And so for me, it wasn't personal, but it was personal because it was something that I knew that if I wanted to maximize what I wanted to do, I can't keep running around the same group of people and expecting those different results to kick in, right?
mm,
To have those conversations that elevate your mind rather than conversations that kind of keep you stagnant. And so um, I think the biggest thing that I did was for me personally, was join Toastmasters.
okay.
I
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, my experience in Toastmasters was one that it gave me a platform, and I'll say this as a black man, it gave me a platform to be able to channel my thoughts,
Yeah.
channel, and then be able to express them in a completed form rather than just sometimes people have platforms, whether it be social media,
Mhm.
and they share, but I feel like sometimes it's snippets, right?
Yep.
It's not extended thoughts, it's not all the way thought through. But
Mhm.
with Toastmasters, you're presenting a thought, you're creating a speech, and then you're delivering the speech in a way to where you're getting the audience to respond to how you intended. And so there was so many aspects to that I found, just beneficial to what I felt like I was doing and the skill set that I felt like I needed. And to be able to better communicate, especially, to tie in communication and emotions and all those different aspects to what I was doing, especially when I was doing presentations for youth.
Yep.
It's a little harder to kind of tap into that adolescent mind. And it's like, you got to find your way in. And, just for me, it was just an opportunity for me to really hone in on those skills. And so, for anyone who is in that space where they feel as though, and like I said, for me, it really felt like I'm one of those moments of life and death. Like if I didn't do this now, then the energy that I have towards this is going to die, and I'll never be able to recover it.
Sure.
And you know what I mean? If I allow that to happen, then I'm going to sit here and regret for the rest of my life, saying like, man, if I would have just did this, or if I would have done that. And yeah, this could have probably happened 10 years down the road. But at the same time, you know what I mean? Would I be in the capacity to still be able to do it and, be satisfied in what I was doing and all those different aspects? So I think that was one of the things that, like you said, those conversations start to change, man. When you notice that, and it's like the people around you aren't speaking the same language, it's just one of those times where it's like, I'm a firm believer that it's those complete strangers
Yes.
that, yeah, man, like it's complete strangers like that blew my mind. It really blew my mind because um, I thought when you're doing something positive or something that you see in your mind or you see in your mind is positive, you would think that the people around you would be the first people to support that. But I had to understand too that everybody doesn't see you the same way that the world may see you, and you may not get judged. Um, be prepared to not get judged accurately by people who are closest to you, because again, sometimes their view is skewed of you. They're
Yep.
kind of too close to you to kind of see the bigger picture sometimes.
Mhm.
And so the people that didn't know me from anywhere, didn't know I was a former athlete, that didn't know any of these things about me, I felt like they just aligned with what I was doing rather than who I was and trying to figure out all the backstory.
Sure.
They just got on board, they supported, and then when they found out more backstory, it gave them more reason to be like, oh wow, I could definitely align with some of the things that you're doing. And so, for me, I found that as one of the things that I like to share with people is that sometimes your community is waiting on you, and those people will find you and you'll find them. And when those moments happen, it's just like you'll know, because it just seems as though like it was a conversation that had been needing to happen for so long, and it's like you finally meet those people, and it's just like wow.
Yeah. I'm happy that you mentioned that because I I think I seek out people. I mean, obviously, I seek out people who are in social work, but I seek out people who are doing all types of different work or uh,
Yeah.
are pursuing their passions. To me, it's more about who is curious, who is also just really curious about something,
Yeah.
pursuing it. They haven't mastered it. I don't necessarily agree with this idea of mastery, right? Because
Right.
always something to learn. There's another step, right?
Right.
I forgot who said it, but there's this, I really resonated with this idea of being an eternal freshman, right?
Mhm.
Like you finish eighth grade and then you're a freshman in high school. You finish high school and you're a freshman in college. Okay, well after that, then either maybe you're the first person, the newest person at the job, or maybe you're the first year grad student or the medical student.
Right.
You're always it's always another opportunity
Right.
to be a freshman, rookie, whatever you want to call it. But yeah. I mean, I'm in this. Yeah, it's weird that not weird, but I guess it's actually fitting. I finished my semester officially yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time recognizing the semester is over and that I should give myself a break because my mind is in go mode. Like it's in go, and it feels good. It feels good. I mean, I had a conversation with the sports marketing director of a university today, and they're talking about what type of programs that they want to implement because there's an initiative now that social justice is becoming a mainstream conversation, and all these things are just happening fluidly, right? The universe is in, I'm working with the universe, whatever you want to call it, things are happening. But I also recognize, like today I intentionally started my day by kind of repeating to myself, your schedule is going to be focused on health and wellness. From now on, it's not about getting things done.
Yeah.
Now you've got to reframe this mind of this process that you were in into taking care of yourself, right?
Right.
So, this morning I woke up. I just bought. I'm in the mountains of Virginia right now with
Okay.
with my dad for the holidays, and it's been great to leave San Francisco because it was weighing on me, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. That's a whole different conversation. But it was just weighing on me because it's a city. But now, with COVID, I mean, it's kind of eerie. It's like an eerie.
Yeah.
And I'm a total extrovert, and like I get my energy from other people.
Right.
I'm motivated, but I really get motivated when I'm around other people.
Some people, yeah.
And like I woke up and like I'm looking outside, and right in his backyard is a high school football field, and there's like there's a kids practicing unofficially. Again, it's a weird thing to say, but I was like, man, I'm so happy to see it.
Right.
Regardless of, their risk or whatever, I'm like, man, this is great.
Just to see some normalcy, man.
Normalcy, right? And so I started off, I made some coffee, and I sat down on the couch, and I recently said my goodbyes to the place that I grew up. My mom moved out of her home for 43 years. And,
wow.
And I didn't really have time to process it. Like
wow.
Because I was moving her, finishing papers, trying to finish the semester.
Right.
And it's, those things are very complicated, right?
Right.
Those extremely complicated situations because you got not only logistics of moving out, but then you have the emotions that are tied to a place.
43 years worth of memories. Yeah, man.
Right. So I sat down and I was like, you know what? I have not had an opportunity to really process. Like I sat on the plane. I'm not going to lie. I sat on the plane out to Virginia and I started crying. Like I started crying when I was on the plane. I was like, oh my God, like I'm not right. Okay. Well, I guess it is right now. Fuck it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
So I couldn't figure out. And I was saying to myself this morning, like, remember health and wellness. I was like, okay, what's a good practice? And I was like, well, let's write it down, like journal.
Yeah.
I sat down and man, I swear for an hour, I'm writing probably tear stains on this computer that I'm typing on because I had to let that stuff out.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm still fighting this urge to like, okay, what's next?
Be productive. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I just walked outside. I leaned on the fence and I just started breathing, went through a little bit of breathing exercise.
Right.
And just looked around, honestly, just had to remind myself, like, it's fine. Don't have to do anything right now.
Man, that is tough because I remember that so vividly. Just everything is like due dates and timelines, right? So it's like everything that you're operating on right now, it's like, okay, this paper is due then. I'm putting everything on this schedule in my mind, like, okay, all right, well, I know I have this to do. And then everything is kind of just orchestrated that way. And then when you get a moment, just even a moment of time to not have to worry about anything, you're just like, it's like anxiety. You're just like, okay, hold on. But if I don't do anything, I'm not taking advantage of this free time. And like, man, I was in that, man. I was in that the entire time I was in school. And I remember once even graduation hit and January rolled in, I was just like, man, like I'm new to myself. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know how to shut it down.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's a real experience, man. I remember that one, man.
Yeah.
It's definitely eased its way slowly, obviously because of new opportunities. But you know, when you're in the thick of it and you're just trying to, you know, get to as much as you possibly can in the time that you're given, yeah.
I mean, I hit two of my classmates up, and we're going to do a podcast, and essentially our podcast is going to be decompressing and really allow
Yeah,
ourselves to talk about what's on our mind, right? What was difficult, and wherever the conversation goes.
right.
But those, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, what is therapy, right? And I would say it's a relationship, right? Therapy can be a relationship, and it's not necessarily always with a therapist, right?
Right.
It can be with friends, it can be with family, but you need those therapeutic relationships. And like we talked about earlier, you know, with the MSWs, and you know, there's other, I mean, like someone who's pursuing a medical degree of some sort, you know,
Right.
there's very few people who understand your specific situation. So it's
Right.
really important to develop the relationships, right? I don't think either of us could stress it enough, right? The value in relationships. And
Right.
you know, you never you never know. You never know who you're going to meet. And you talked about strangers. You know,
Yeah, man.
I just met these folks here, and I shared some of the most intimate things about my life with them, right?
Yeah.
And it's been a cool experience. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a really cool experience to do this with two other men, uh,
Yeah.
because this is what we're talking about in terms of breaking out of these cycles, right? That same idea
Right.
we were talking about,
Right.
to being the provider, and you as a man, and your role as a man, and which
Yeah.
part of that might be a great thing, but there's another side of it where it can be
Of
detrimental,
course. Of
right?
course. Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, when you were talking about, you're talking about relationships and the uniqueness of people who supported you in school, you know, that kind of resonated with me.
Absolutely, man. And it's I think that's the one thing that if you've gone through it, had the cohort experience, I think that is one of the things that, man, I wouldn't have, it's not something that I feel like I would have been able to complete alone.
Yeah,
Right. If I just decided I was going to do my MSW and it was just coursework that I had to kind of get through to do it,
sure.
it was the people that I was doing this with. And, you know, like it was like a combination of all of our whys. Why are we here? Why are we here on a Saturday taking these classes? You know what I mean? All day. Like, why are we doing these internships? Why are we doing all of this? And it was just knowing that you weren't alone in that experience and that so many other people share that experience with you, regardless of what their reason why they were doing it.
Yeah,
You know, and I think that was, you know, something powerful to be a part of. And I felt like it just gave me a sense of team, a camaraderie. Like we were all working in the same direction for the same thing. And I was like, yo, I can like, those were two of the best years of my life, just being in that space with a cohort.
hmm
You know, and I feel like that aspect of sometimes what that coursework and that program provides for you is that relationship, and the relationships you have with those people that you meet. And those, you know, to this day, those are some of the strongest relationships I have with the people in my cohort, because again, we shared things that, you know, you just sometimes will never share with anybody. And it's like, you know, for somebody that if I know somebody who knows, you know, those aspects of me, but also have the clinical training to be able to provide me that insight, you know what I mean? Like I love that. I love that side of the relationship. So like I tell people all the time, like my best friends now are mostly social workers. Like the conversations that I have is, you know, just because I know that I'm going to get something from that conversation that um, I know comes from the standpoint that they can see past some of the things that I tend to overlook.
Yeah.
And then also it's going to help me in turns to do that as well for, someone down the line. And so, I love those experiences that I've had and shared with, my cohort. Because I mean, just looking back on the memories and the relationships that you make, man, those are special.
I know you probably you're a busy dude, so I don't know how much more time you got.
Man, I got some time. I definitely I know wanted to talk about the role, man. I know you wanted to get
Yeah,
into the aspect.
man, I'm one of I have set in with exploration. I've set it with organic exploration, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't necessarily want to, just drive a conversation in a direction. I do want to let it breathe and just happen, right? Like that's
right,
what I really miss. You
right, right.
I'm like, I meet that stranger, I meet the new person, and we see where the conversation goes, right?
Right,
Uh,
right.
like kind of speaking of where it goes. Do you have the PhD itch?
I do, I do. It's there. It's there now. I'll say that it's there now. um, it's deciding. I think I've been in a place where I'm trying to decide on PhD or DSW.
Okay.
Um, right, and so it would just depend on um,
Who's gonna?
yeah, who's gonna pick up the tab? That's one. That's the first one. And then also, it's just I want to make sure that what I'm bringing in
Mm,
is something that is not only utilized for me, but for the field, and then also for the world of sports, because I do want to do something that is geared towards sport.
mm,
Um, and then for me, that's just in a sense of being able to develop an expertise,
yeah.
um, and then also to be able to know that what I'm doing now fits identically into what I want to explore and what I want to research. And so I feel like with those two things, being able to kind of fit into a marriage, I think that would be, a perfect opportunity to advance in a program and to do that. The only thing, obviously, with the DSW and the PhD that I've heard from people, who have done either course, obviously more people tell you PhD if you want to go into academia, X, Y, and Z. DSW if you want to be a practicing, social work. This is something that you want to utilize in practice.
Yeah.
And so, you have those both sides, but I also know people with PhDs who don't do academia and, just utilize the PhD for their expertise and their consulting. And so, obviously the price tag is a lot more heavier on the PhD side. So, it's one of those things that I've definitely thought about. Something I would definitely want to do at Barry, just with my relationship over there and also, hopefully to be a resource too, because I don't know too many men or men of color who have got their PhD from that university. I don't think there is one.
I'll go on a limb and say there aren't very many. I
Right.
think I read a statistic specifically with black men. I think it's roughly 6 or 7 thousand total.
Yeah. So
So
it's not a lot.
not
It's
a
not a
lot.
lot.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
so part of me definitely wants to utilize that. If you would have asked me that when I started when I started my MSW program, I would have probably said no. But just the curiosity part. I think that's the aspect that once you have that curiosity working, and it's going, and it's not allowing you to just rest,
Nope.
tap into that.
Yep.
That's the creativity, right? So, part of me is definitely wanting to do that. It's just figuring out the logistics of it.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dive in real quick. Let's talk about this role with the Raiders and the uniqueness of it. You're a social worker of a professional team, specifically with the alumni, right?
Right. Yep.
So this is new. Everything about it is new. You are new with the organization. This
Yep.
role is new within professional sports. So yeah, where are you where are you at with this thing?
Man, so it took a while for me to one fully understand like one on the personal level it was surreal, right? It was this moment of just like life coming full circle, and it happened at a time where it was just like it couldn't have been a better time because obviously I've been on both sides of the pandemic, right? So as a business owner, trying to make sure that I can keep this business going, and then applying for this job and getting this job. So to be on the other side of it now, and for it to be the dream opportunity that I couldn't even have thought that even existed.
Yeah.
The first thing was to get a better understanding of that, like where am I, personally, what do I, it's just all that stuff, all that, I had to go through with, really sitting down with my supervisor, who was like a mentor and a therapist for me, and him being able to kind of just, walk me through a lot of the experiences that I was having. And I just felt like at the time it was a lot of different things that came up, survivor's remorse, just feeling like I'm someone who got this amazing opportunity while I see a lot of my peers and my family, struggling in these times. So it was just, a part of that was what I was wrestling with as well. And but getting here and getting into the role, for me it was like there was the application, the description of the role, and then there's the actual role. And so coming into the role, we have about 950 alumni. I think at the time when I applied for the job, it was about 300. And so, I like to give the credit of this vision to, my boss, my superior, Shannon. She's the one that had this, vision of what this department could be.
Yeah.
And, she was given the blessing from the Raiders to really, start to pipe it out to see what it would look like. And a part of that was she wanted a social worker on staff because of the work that she's done with some of the social workers that were working for some of the organizations that, serve the NFL alumni.
Yeah.
And so, that skill set that she was looking for was, was put out there. And so when I got into the role, it was just, getting a better, clear idea of her vision of what she wanted this to be, and to really understand of what, we were taking on, because it's not so much about what we want to do, it's also a part of what the alumni are telling us that they want to do.
Yeah.
Or what they want from us, and so the feedback so far, a lot of what I do right now is help them to coordinate their retirement benefits, help them to understand a little bit better the collective bargaining agreement, which is done about every 10 years. And so a lot of times those benefits change, and it also changes based on the years in which you played. And so, one thing about my role, I serve guys who've played in the 60s and 70s to guys who have retired yesterday. You know what I mean? So we're talking about guys who are in their 80s, and we're talking about guys who are in their 20s, early 20s. And so, sometimes when you look at that just disparity in age, and then also the disparity in the times that they played, you got guys who played in the 60s who made $12,000 a year playing professional football versus guys who play today, and, you just get $1 million for just showing up to camp. You know what I mean? So it's that disparity in itself. And then also some of the resources that the older guys weren't afforded versus what the newer guys have. And so, learning all of that information and then being able to put that all in one place for our alumni. So that way they're not having to search, all these different organizations that partner with the NFL to provide these services. They can kind of, speak with me. I help them, and we do like a needs assessment, kind of put everything in place. And then, from there, we just create like a plan of what we're going to do. And, it's pretty much just, it's social work. I think that's the one thing that I want, people to understand about the role is that it is social work. It's not, a lot of people call it sports social work and all that. Like, listen, at the end of the day, you're working with people, and you know what I mean? Like, these are people, they're not playing. So no, we're not out on the field playing catch while we're doing these assessments. It's not that, you know what I mean? It's really just, the epitome of what we do, as a social worker. We refer, we assess, and a lot of times when, their needs are communicated to me, I advocate. I got to find what resources exist. And, if they don't exist or if I can't find them, then I make a phone call and we get into the process of advocating for what is there or not there. And I think, that's some of the things that I enjoy a lot about the role is that, because obviously this is new and it's one of those things that are, we're building out as we go is to put, I think, the rest of the league in a sense on notice about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful piece because if what we do goes right, this creates so many opportunities for so many other alumni and social workers, right? For this to be something that is not so far fetched or not something that is out of the norm, but something that could be integrated into not only the National Football League but other leagues as well. Especially when it comes to alumni. So helping these guys to coordinate services and that aspect of the job, I think for me that was one of the things as far as just my experience with transition, knowing that we have vulnerable populations, obviously throughout the populations that we work with, and just getting a better understanding of where those vulnerabilities lie and how do we address those vulnerabilities and those gaps to really be able to serve and be efficient and be effective, right? Impactful. And so the feedback that we've gotten so far, man, it's just been, it's been amazing. The alumni, especially guys who have played for multiple teams, they know what alumni looks like for another team versus what we do.
Right.
And, they see the difference. And so, they make a point to share that with us. And, so far it's just been, amazing, especially when guys, first get on the screen with some of the guys. And, these are guys that I watched playing when I was a kid. And just to hear them excited about, seeing someone that connects to them, that plays sports, that has gone it, to the highest level and had the experience of being cut and all the stuff that come with it, and, for a lot of them as well, just seeing a man of color across the screen for many of our, alumni are going to be men of color. So, I think for a lot of them, it was something that they saw and that they were excited about. And it just also speaks to the Raiders. And, the Raiders have had a history of making sure that, we've gotten opportunities as far as the first Black head coach in the NFL was through the Raiders.
Yeah.
First Hispanic Latino head coach was through the Raiders. The first woman executive, you know what I mean? So all those different things that this Raider organization has done this in terms of diversity, I think just speaks to how they view the process and the progress of what the organization makes. But just being a part of this, is really a family. Being a part of this family and understanding, what my role is and, how my role just works to it supersede what the alumni departments have done, traditionally. So, definitely blessed in that aspect of it in this capacity. And, every day is just, putting things together and as we kind of get a better idea as we go forward, it's just letting the data speak for itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We collect a lot of data, we get that data back and, we just, obviously that curiosity part from that data is like, okay, well, what is this telling us? And, what direction should we go in? And let's get feedback as well to confirm it. And, so that's a large part of what it's been in the first 5 months, I would say.
Yeah, no, you're going to have, having been there a short time, I can only imagine that this role is going to grow and grow and grow, right? You're going to have to, not to say that you're not working collaboratively with folks now, but as this blossoms,
Right.
the needs are going to increase. The needs are going to become more unique, and that's your job to, like you said before, to not only advocate for, but go out and look for the resource, right?
Absolutely.
And that's wonderful, man. I think that you're doing your part, not only serving people, but you're breaking down this kind of cultural relationship with athletes.
Right.
I think oftentimes we, and it's promoted through it's promoted through every medium you can think of, right? We look at athletes and their physical statures and their ability to perform,
Right.
and we think that they don't have the same obstacles as anyone else, right? Now, if you're
Right.
making a ton of money, then yes, there's some, then you have access, and maybe that's what it is. Being in that circle, you do have access to some things, right?
Right.
So access to resources to support you. But if you don't know how to use those resources, or if you don't actually think that those are important, then
Right.
what good is it? And then in my research now, it's really looking at sport as this vehicle for social change and social movement. There's so much history
Mhm.
with you know
Right.
sports
Yeah.
and shifted, right? Whether we're talking about the Olympics or more modern days, Cat taking a knee.
Right.
These aren't politicians, right? These are
Right.
people who have a platform, who are speaking out against larger issues, and they don't have they're a major part of the driving force. They might not be in the policy room,
Right.
but we're talking about
Yeah.
shifting cultures.
The influence, right? It's this, it's as simple sometimes as just being a person of influence that can, you know, have that a large scale impact with just your opinion, with just being able to take a stance on something, and to see and utilize it. And I look at from with the Muhammad Ali's, the Jim Browns, the people who had to do it in that capacity during a time where it was, obviously it was less that we were fighting for so much, but we were receiving, just the less of the stick at that time. And then, as time has progressed, we see where that has either tried to move or progress, and we still see some of the discrepancies and where we know that things need to be done.
Yep.
And you see these other athletes that step up to the forefront, the Kaepernicks, the LeBron Jameses,
Yep.
the guys that, utilize their voice and their platform to make sure that people know that injustice is wrong. Like sometimes it's just as simple as that, but people who just stand on their word. And I think, with where we are right now, and just society and just how many things have come out of this year that have been progressive and forward moving, especially in the world of sports and social injustice at that intersection. It's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah.
And I think, as more people and more organizations start to welcome in, practitioners, clinicians, DIY experts, all these different things are just forward moving to progress. And I think, it just creates so many opportunities for people who have unique skill sets to be on board for those changes. And I think this is one of those moments in times where it just seems as though if you have a niche, if you have something to offer in this space,
Yeah.
then more than ever, it's being utilized, it's being tapped into.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it doesn't have to be with the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
These are things that you can now be created on your own and tap into a larger market through the use of social media and social influence. And so, it's definitely an exciting time. It's an exciting time. In that aspect, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of more work to be done.
Oh, yeah.
But just being in those spaces to be able to have a voice, and utilizing that voice. And, it's definitely, as I look through the generations of players and you start to see, like, the guys who played in the earlier phases of it. And you talked about, just sometimes the social connection to athletes, or what the perception is, right? And a lot of the guys that I've talked to who played 60s, 70s, 80s, these are guys who had second careers
Yeah.
and successful careers. I mean, guys who've opened businesses and were able to, do better than they did when they played professionally. And guys who went back to school to become lawyers. We got architects. We got all kind of guys that have, passed through the organization as a player and then went on to do many things. And so for me, I think a lot of times it's being able to capture those stories
Yeah.
of these guys who have done these things to maybe the newer, younger players who obviously know the financial ramifications of playing professional sports, right?
Yep.
Because to be real, that was one of my main reasons of playing sports, right? Was, man, if I do this, my mom can retire. My
Yeah.
mom can do this, right?
Mhm.
And then you had guys who back then were just playing because ultimately that was just the next highest level. You know, the money was there, but it wasn't $500 million that
Sure,
Mahomes got.
right.
You know, so you know, I look at a lot of times those differences in between, you know, the gaps of what we work in. But I definitely look at, you know, this group of athletes in this year in which they have had to really, like, you know, uh, just try to go out there and compete at a high level while still trying to drive the shift of culture, you know, because, you know, it could have easily been something that would have just been, hey, you log on the TV and all that stuff that we saw throughout the summer, all the marches, all the protests could have been gone.
Yeah.
And, you know, they made sure that this was continued and was pushed throughout, you know, their league. And you know, it is something to be proud of, and the direction that they're going.
Yeah, I think it's a huge selling point for any athletic program or any program for that matter. It is to utilize this time and not just use it as not just use it for publicity, but
Right.
to actually put some effort, some resources into creating creating programming or offering services, but that really drive the message of social justice. Right?
Yeah.
We're not and we're using sport specifically, right, for the
Right.
conversation, but outside of sport,
Mm.
how are academic institutions applying this into curriculum and their approach
Right.
to education? You know, equity is a major conversation right now,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about online learning and who's able to
Right.
access classes. You know, technology is absolutely imperative and integral in our day to day now,
Yeah. It's
right?
a necessity, right?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, man, I'm pumped for you, and I have, man, I mean, there's like 10 different things that we'll talk about at another time,
Yeah.
just again, letting things happen organically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, man, let me before we end here, I've been trying to get into a habit of ending every podcast with asking the guest something that they love or they're in love with right now. Um, so I'm going to ask you that question. What's
Man.
love or something you're in love with right now?
Man. So I would say the one thing right now, man, it was, so I talked about earlier, just taking about the last 2 months away from social media, and really just allowing myself to be grounded in where I am currently. So the thing that I love the most of where I'm at is being present,
Mm, mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of times it's like when opportunities present themselves, especially when they have so many ramifications for future success, we start to try to plan and map out how this whole thing is going to go. And we forget to just, like, not even the master, but take on the task of learning what it is we're doing now.
Yeah,
Because if we don't, then all of that stuff that we're trying to reach long term, you know, a lot of times those stuff, you know, they fade out. The vision gets kind of blurry when you haven't taken care of the stuff that you need to right now. And so I've gotten to the point where now I'm in love with the process of being present, and just as things come day to day, it's like, okay, I'm learning. I can make concessions for the future. I can have intentions for the future.
yeah,
Um, but understanding that if I don't do and take advantage of what I am doing right now, then all the ambitions, all the goals, all that stuff, you know, can be affected by what I choose not to do right now and being present. So, man, that's one thing that I've definitely am grateful for, the opportunity that I have the time to do that, obviously, and that, you know, I do want to make myself more available, especially when it comes to, you know, other people in the field,
yep,
other students, other first year graduates, all those different things, that the experiences that I feel I can share and be, you know, utilized for. And so, definitely thankful for the platform, and appreciate your time, man, and invite me on for this for your podcast, man.
This is what it's all about, man. I mean, if I could sit here, maybe this is something I probably don't. I don't know if I want to do this. If I could get paid for sitting and talking to people.
Hey, man, listen.
Hey, look, I'm saying you never know. I don't know if this is something that will take off, and maybe this does become some form of a profession or whatever. But I love doing this. This is so therapeutic for me, especially right now when I don't get to talk to people or interact with people like I normally would. I can't help but think this is it's my civic duty to expose people in any way.
Absolutely.
Right? It's my responsibility. Somebody did that for me, right? Somebody exposed me. Somebody, made me listen to conversations I did not want to listen to, or you know what I mean?
Right.
And I was fortunate to do that, right? Like I'm extremely lucky
to
have people do that. So this is my pleasure, man. So we'll be in touch, man. I got, like I said, I got 1,000. I got 1,001 for you, and who knows? Maybe we'll be working collaboratively in some way, shape, or form, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, take care of yourself. Give yourself some time to be well during this like super busy time.
Yeah, man. Health and wealth, man. And I think, well, you nailed that. You nailed that on the head, man. Just as a man, prioritizing your health and well-being, I would say this in this space right now, that is one thing that I've never taken advantage of as far as being able to prioritize that. And so I think for the first time in life, it's like I'm able to prioritize my basic needs.
Yep.
And so, yes, scheduling a doctor's appointments, going to see the dentist, all the stuff that sometimes we just be like,
I get that.
So, man, yeah, just taking time for that and realizing that has so much effect on us, and our capabilities of being able to do more, just prioritizing that. So, yeah, man.
Cool. Well, enjoy the rest of the afternoon over there on the West Coast or in Vegas. You in Vegas?
Yeah.
We'll talk soon. Hopefully we can do it again.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Looking forward to it.
All right, dude. Have a good one.
Yeah, man. Same.